opinion, and I'm sure some of these other guys will say, is dealing with spotting. And sometimes these embers from a massive fire can spot, I've heard, as far as a mile out from the actual fire. So people are always at risk like that. We run through a series of problems, folks. Tell them there's an increased number of wildland fires. Residents do little or no pre-fire activities. And then here's a little cartoon of firefighters looking at the matchstick, saying we better go get the hose. Just a little comedy picture there. And then people also, as you all know, expect when they call 911, they'll get a tailor-made response to fit their needs, and they'll be right there ready to help them right then. Well, you all know, just like I do, that sometimes that's very difficult to do. So what Ready, Set, Go does is put responsibility sort of back on the homeowner, utilizing the partnership between wildland firefighters, structure firefighters, and the homeowners. So that's what we talked about here. Show them a couple pictures. One of the things when this picture pops up, I like to tell them, you know, that the wildfire can warm the air out in front of it to about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And most people are like, oh wow, that sounds pretty hot. They don't know what 1,500 degrees is. But when I tell them that at 400 degrees, about a quarter of that temperature, that curtains and wallpaper and bedding can ignite through the windows just because of that heat, then they start getting their attention. And at 450 degrees, wood studs can literally ignite, again, from just the heat of the fire. Again, we're talking about a massive fire and very wild and massive vegetation and fuel loading for wildfire. And so we'll discuss that a little bit, but then we'll go on to the next picture and say that, you know, a wildfire usually does not. As a matter of fact, it almost never engulfs a home like this picture here. Of course, you all have probably seen this in what you do from the structure fire, especially from within. Is fully involved, but the wildfire usually will not obviously affect the home in this way. It doesn't attack a home like a flash flood or an avalanche. It's usually the small things like the roof and the gutters and things like that. People want to know how do homes catch on fire. Well, obviously we know that direct flame, if the flame comes in contact with the home, it's going to probably catch on fire, particularly depending on what it's built from. And just again, that radiant heat, how hot is the wildfire approaching their home? The heat alone can cause it to spontaneously combust. And another way, one of the most common ways that wildfire affects somebody's home is from the fire brands, the embers falling, being cast ahead of the fire, carried by the wind. So we get into talking about then, what can they do to mitigate and keep that from being an issue around their home as wildfire threatens. We're going to look at this home right here, and again, I'm blowing through this for you guys' sake tonight so we can all get on our family, but I don't want to present it to you. But we talk about what can be done around this home. And you look at some of the situation there on top of the roof, right there, kind of in a ridge line there. You think, well, a campfire started by a small tinder and kindling, basically with that kind of stuff, and ember spotting on your home, you got a little bitty fine fuel, just like having a campfire, trying to start a campfire on your roof. It gets their attention. One of the best things they do is clean their gutters. The one thing I really hit about too, and I'm kind of breezing through this thing, is what we call defensible space. An area of defensible space, if they can, around their home is certainly 30 feet is sort of that magic number, if you will, from the dense wildland area, the forest out behind their home. You see some other characteristics, a watered lawn if they can, the green and lean lawn, and of course we don't encourage them to just make a parking lot out of their home. We like for people to have plants and landscaping. I give them a choice of some lists of some less flammable vegetation and things they can plant around their home and kind of keep that landscape look, but just not vegetation right up against their home. That'd be that direct flame contact, breaking the fire to the home. You can see shingles, asphalt shingles, or metal roofing is encouraged as well, because the old wood type shingles, which we don't see a lot of around here anymore, are certainly more flammable than your asphalt and your metal. So this is one of the most important slides that I like to stress and spend a little time on. People want to say, why 30 feet? This is the illustration that I have here. If you can imagine the candle here in this picture, look at the height of the wick. That's the fuel, you might say. That's what's burning right there. Look how tall the flame is above that fuel, above what's burning. So from that, you say, well, you factor in wind. If you can imagine wind blowing from this direction, that's one of the reasons why we encourage 30 feet, if you can imagine. Wind gusts taking the palmetto probably 4 or 5 feet high there in the picture, and a good flame height and a good breeze just whipping that around. So again, we spend a lot more time discussing. We look at this picture and we say, what did the homeowner do right? Well, they got their wood away from the house. Their firewood stacked away from their house. They're watering their lawn. They got a hose up. The grass is green. Well, what did they do wrong? Well, just talk about some things. And they would say, well, their shed's mighty close to the woods. sheds have flammables and gasoline and scuba tanks and propane tanks, you know, so you try to mitigate issues when you can. Spend a lot of time on that. I don't know if you all ever encounter situations like this, but with 911 and calls that you all receive, I want to try to go through a little scenario right here. See if this sounds kind of familiar to you. Homeowner calls up in a panic, 911, and 911 operator says, "What's your emergency?" Homeowner says, "Hell, I have a fire behind my home." The dispatcher says, "What's your address?" The homeowner says, "Well, my address is 1234 Cluttered Street, but I live way back in the woods and my address isn't clearly marked. You're going to drive slow on the narrow dirt road. I might have to meet you to get to my house. Now, beware of the neighbor's pit bulls running loose out there. Also, I guess I'll have to move the camper in the car so you can drive down the street. I blocked the street because I was working on those vehicles. Also, I got a little bit of stuff in my front yard. So you may need to work around that. But hurry and save my wood frame home." You know, I mean, it's comical and all, but that is the kind of stuff that, and that's an exaggeration, but that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. And certainly you guys too, as first responders and structural firefighting agencies. So that's just another little silly example. We go along and talk to them about how universities study that landscaping I was talking about before, about the flammability of plants. They talk about the ignitability, the combustibility, the sustainability, and the consumability. We could, again, in a presentation like this, really go into the details of all that. As I wind this thing down here, this right here is real life pictures. This is because of some of the recent wildfires out in Texas. Had a chance to take some pictures right there. And the home that you see behind those few pines there is the only home on this whole block that was still standing. Notice, heroes, and I know you guys hear that term a lot, just like yourself, from what I was told, are the ones responsible for saving this home. What was happening in this particular area is wildfire out in the woods approaching this neighborhood was getting to a lot of these board fences, these privacy fences, catching the fence on fire because of the heat. It was burning, it was catching on fire. And it would burn down the fence to the home and burn the homes. Well, notice this one here, the gate was moved, ripped off the hinges, and a panel was knocked down, and probably the firefighters got there and probably did some spraying as well. So again, you just talk to people about thinking like a fire. If that fire can travel to your home, it's probably going to get there in a wildfire situation. You look at this and you say, well, what can be done here to mitigate the wildfire hazard? And one of the most common answers you get is one word: rake. People say rake. So certainly rake up the fine fuels there, the leaves. One of the things we encourage is covering those vent holes too with some kind of screen or mesh. Another thing that was happening out there a lot too, y'all, is embers and fire brands were landing on like vinyl siding type, you know, holders for air conditioning, and it would melt the vinyl siding, air conditioning would fall out, and then embers would fall into the house and catch it on fire. So that was a lot of what the crews were finding was doing that. We encourage them to keep the vents, repair the vents, any that look like that, with 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch at the minimum screen around the inside and backside of those, any vents around your house, whether it be your porch or the bottom there. And by the way, we said a home, a stick-built home, usually the roof is the most vulnerable area, whether it be the roof itself or the gutters, the debris landing in it, but mobile homes is underneath because the fire creeping along get right underneath the bottom of trailers, you know. So roofs for the big half of the stick-built houses and mobile homes is underneath. Look at this picture. This is always a lot of fun. You stop here and you ask the crowd, what can be done here? Of course, they name all kinds of stuff. You know, you got fuels under the porch right up against the house, vinyl siding, not the best siding, you know, but not a lot of people can afford to change their siding unless they're doing some kind of reconstruction, remodeling. Fuel, trees, limbs, just different things right up against the house there. The plant on the porch there, and gasoline, with the red cans right there, so not the best thing to have in a situation like that. Take a look at this area that's been charred. You see a couple of houses there. The one on your left, obviously been destroyed. One on your right, still standing. Ask people around the room, why do you think the one on the right is still standing? And of course you get some comical answers, but obviously a lot of people say, well, it looks like they got a sidewalk around it, or you know, something to break up the fire. And some people say, well, the roof's clean, doesn't appear to be any straw or debris on it. Some people say, well, it's farther away from the